Hey everybody, welcome to a special episode of Kentucky Commons. As a part of Louisville Beer Week this year, we held a few panel discussions around town, and we're very happy to bring one of those conversations to you now. In this episode, feature a conversation from our Louisville Beer for All panel, where we invited folks from around the Commonwealth to discuss their problems, challenges, and issues, both personally and professionally, in the craft beer industry. Thank you to 78 Social and the Kentucky Guild of Brewers for supporting this wide-ranging and fascinating conversation between our varied field of industry experts. We hope that you enjoy this conversation as much as we did, and I hope that in it, you find something valuable. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Hey there. Welcome. Thank you for coming. For those who don't know, my name is Jessie Harding. I'm the executive director for the Kentucky Guild of Brewers. This is my louder. No one's ever said that to me before. And I just came up to introduce Katie Molck, my business partner, marketing director for the Kentucky Guild of Brewers, amongst many other talents. And thanks Ale Trail and Noble Funk for having us, and 78 Social. And okay, I'll let Katie take it from here. But I just want to say, hey, if you get time after, come say hey.
Thank you, Jessie, for that marvelous introduction. Yes, thank you guys for being here. So Louisville Ale Trail actually asked us a few months ago when they were planning Louisville Beer Week to kind of work with them to kind of re-envision how this panel functions. And we talked about it, and we thought it'd be really cool to showcase just people in the Kentucky beer industry from all walks of life, just to share their stories and experiences. So I'm very excited to have these four up here with me. I've actually talked to each of them individually and got to hear their stories personally. And so you're going to hear some really pointed questions to them, some group questions, and we're going to treat it more like a conversation. So, and then at the end, we'll have a Q&A. So if you have questions, we'll do them at the end. Sound good? Cool. Well, this is my favorite part. I'm going to introduce everybody. So to my left here is Sawyer Robbins. Sawyer is actually an Indiana transplant who got into craft beer at the ripe age of 21 and fell headfirst into it. He's worked at breweries in Indiana and is now in Lexington, and he started as a bartender at Blue Stallion Brewing Company and is now the marketing director at Blue Stallion Brewing Company. So this is Sawyer. Give him a round of applause. And next we have Tyler Montgomery, the owner of Abettor Brewing Company in Winchester, Kentucky, that opened in 2019. But this isn't his first rodeo in beer. He actually launched the Brewer magazine in 2012. Is that right? 2015? 13, sorry. 13. Still a little while ago. So he's been in the beer industry for some time too, and he's actually successfully grown Abettor from being a 1.5 barrel system to a 10 barrel now in downtown Winchester. So yeah, give it up for Tyler. And then Leah Dienes, down there too. Most of you probably know Leah from Apocalypse Brewing Company, but who she still says she just works for her cats. Is that right? But most of you know Leah from Apocalypse, but there's so many other things Leah's done in this community. She's been a longstanding member in the Pink Boot Society, and actually her hop blend was selected this year as a 2023 hop blend to be sold all over the world next year. She's judged numerous beer competitions at Great American Beer Fest, the World Cup, you name it, she's probably done it. And she's also heads the DEI committee for the Kentucky Guild of Brewers as well. So yeah, go Leah. And then last but certainly not least is John Shrader, who is, as you've probably surmised, is his brewery. We're here right now. But John's been in the brewing company the brewing industry for nearly a decade, but actually, John was not a brewer for this whole time. He actually was a Purdue biomedical engineer to begin with. But as he told me, beer's always been in his life from a young age, from floating bottles in the bathtub and pulling off labels with his dad for their home brews to eventually becoming a home brewer himself. He worked in breweries in Chicago, then Florida, and in 2018 moved back to Louisville and opened Noble Funk Brewing Company. All right, cool. Well, I'm going to get into the nitty gritty of it, and we're going to start with Sawyer here. So when I talked to Sawyer, we kind of chatted about, and a lot of times in breweries, a lot of people hire from within, get promoted from within, and oftentimes they start as bartenders. So Sawyer kind of told me his story about starting as a bartender at Blue Stallion and kind of recognizing that maybe they needed a little help with social media. And saw the problem and kind of brought it up to leadership. So Sawyer, I'd love to know if you can speak to that experience about wanting to grow at a brewery and how you were able to make that jump from bartender to marketing director and share any challenges that you faced along the way.
Thank you, Katie. I always hate trying to figure out how loud I am on a microphone. That's like my worst part of doing anything like this. But to speak to that, I was 21 when I got into the brewing industry. I had been a barista, and there's something about being a barista that makes you do the jump from like coffee to beer. It's a pipeline. It's very real. And I'd been in the service industry since I was basically 16 years old. I went to college. I went to Ball State in Indiana. Chirp, chirp. Ball State is not just a party school. But I went and I got my degree in English studies, and then I did a minor in digital media. And I kind of had this revelation my junior into my senior year that I loved beer and I loved social media, because who doesn't? So I was like, how do I combine those two things? Like, how do I make that real? And I figured the best way was to start from the bottom. And bartending, it's great money, it's fast money, it's easy. And I got in and I just really fell in love with it very, very quickly. I bartended, I served. And from then, when I came to Kentucky, I joined Blue Stallion Brewing Company. And I was like, you guys, if we just make these posts a little bit nicer, if we like take some photos, if we post nice captions, if we make some reels, and they put their trust in me and they were like, we want to see what you can do. And from there, it has really, really grown. And I have taught myself a lot. I've learned a lot. And it is truly like what I want to do until my finger can't like push the shutter button on a camera anymore. Or like if I can't like type a caption with my thumbs anymore. But I would say like the biggest challenge has probably just been the algorithm. The algorithm is my biggest enemy. They say you're your own worst enemy, but I disagree. I think the algorithm is my biggest enemy. Just fighting that, fighting the way that things change, fighting trends, trying to stay within them, but also trying to make something so original that then you create a trend. It's an uphill battle, but at the end of the day, being really creative and just trusting the product to sell itself is also really like, that's what's going to win the customer, really. So.
Yes. Yeah. And something we talked a little bit about earlier is that Sawyer's actually a bit of a Lexington celebrity in the beer industry. Apparently, when people found out he was going to be on this panel, they were going wild on social media, which is so cool because Sawyer's kind of established himself as an advocate, not only in the LGBTQ community, but just opening spaces for people in general. I'd love for you to share kind of how you're helping to open doors and just how you're being an advocate in the beer community for all kinds of people.
It's really just about putting your foot down, and putting your foot in the door and telling people that awkward conversations and hard conversations, they have to happen. And that being silent is just the same as taking on the wrong side of things. So making sure that you are telling people not only that you are a space that they're invited into, that your product is not for them, but then like using your actions to make sure that they're aware that you're not just talking the talk, you're trying to walk the walk. I've really tried to use as much of my sway as possible when I can. There's so much more I can do, and there's so much more you can always do. But just trying to have open and honest dialogue with anybody who is above you, anybody who has the power to make those changes or make things happen. And just also kind of like sometimes just not going behind people's backs, but just saying like, hey, this is the opportunity. I've made it happen. It's like on the plate. It's yours to say yes or no to. And then at that point, it is in the hands of ownership. It's in the hands of management. And you just, let them know this is why we should do this. We should make sure that our space in our product is for everybody. So that's what I try to use my platform for.
And I think that's something to cheers to for sure. And
Bars on the floor.
And you also, one last thing to note here that you did mention, but I thought was so cool was that because you were working with leadership and other management, you guys raised some money for Kentucky Health Justice Network through some beer. I don't know if you want to talk about that for just a second.
Yes, we did. We raised a little over $600 for Kentucky Health Justice Network, specifically their trans advocacy part of their program. It was really cool. It was one of the first times that they've done something of that caliber at Blue Stallion. They have taken the opportunity many, many times that we've been open for 10 years. Those things that they've done in the past have been, I wouldn't want to call them like quieter, but they've been a little bit more like, oh, we're doing this. But I was like, this is really important, especially with the legislature that's happening in Kentucky and across America. And just making sure that we're like openly saying, everybody can come drink this beer. Everybody can come hang out here. It's not just about getting you in the door to, sell you something, but also saying like, we support everybody. We support every Kentuckian. We support all Appalachians, no matter how you identify. And that was a really cool start. And that's where I've just been like, I can do anything I want.
I love that. I love the energy. And also, if you're not following Blue Stallion's Instagram page or social media, I would not encourage you to get your phone out now, but afterwards, please get your phone out and follow them because he's doing great work there. It's awesome. Yes, absolutely. I love all the clapping, encouragement. I love it. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and we're going to move down the line here to Tyler. Kentucky's home to nearly, 100 breweries now, maybe more. And we often fall into these two pitfalls when it comes to that. Louisville and Lexington tend to be the mecca, right? But there's tons of other breweries throughout the state, that maybe don't, get as much recognition or it might be harder for them to open versus Louisville or Lexington. Tyler, can you speak to kind of the pros and cons of opening a brewery outside of these two, Kentucky beer meccas? I said mecca 3 times. I've literally never said that word in my life before, but here we are, mecca.
In all fairness, I wrote an article in 2013 talking about Lexington being a beer mecca, even though I lived in Louisville at the time. So I'm sorry. But we did put Against the Grain on our first cover, so there was something there. Winchester's unique. It's definitely what I would consider on an island in terms of relationships with other brewers, strictly because you do have it's close enough that you have the reach, but it's not like you're gonna, like I told Katie on the phone, it's not like you're at 5 o'clock, you're going to go drop in someplace on your way home. You have to legitimately make a plan to go. And when we go over to Lexington or we come to Louisville, we drop into a couple. Your friends end up being people that have the same type of scenarios. Our friends at Dreaming Creek in Richmond, even though they're a little bit bigger of a city, they've got a university, they still battle some of the same issues that we've had with, city governments and things like that on smaller scales that weren't really prepped to have a brewery. Outside of that, Winchester's very blessed that has a really strong community and it loves its people and it loves its businesses. And we've been very blessed to be part of a growth element of downtown. It's so strange. Like even in the downtown of Winchester that's had seen this rebirth since about 2015. When we opened in 2019 on Lexington Avenue, US 60, we were just maybe a block or two outside of downtown, and we still felt like we were a little outside of what was going on even in our own city. So the expansion that we've gone through since 21, being right down on Main Street in our downtown, has been a game changer for our business. And, we do get press. We're well known and things like that. We do good things. We've hired well. We were talking out before, the beauty of being in a town of our size is it's just big enough that we have really talented people. It's small enough that, a place like Abettor holds a lot of clout in our city, and we do some really good things to make our city proud. And it helps us to hire, and we get to hire some really, really, really talented people. And that's kind of helped us to be successful, but still you're kind of on the outskirts of everybody else and what's going on in terms of Becca. And, you're just kind of on the outside looking in sometimes. And that's always been kind of tough, but I think we do a good job of working through it. We're not, like in Hazard, which I know now they've got to deal with that, and they look in and talk to us, and there's just a, pathway. So, but yeah.
Yes, and we kind of talked too about regulation laws around beer, right? While we've gone leaps and bounds in the last 10 years, we have self-distribution and people can have tap rooms and all kinds of great things have happened. But when we start to get on the outskirts, as you said, from Louisville and Lexington, the knowledge starts to come down a little bit, I think, on beer culture. And you experienced that pretty in the middle of it, because you weren't only trying to get your brewery open, but you also had to insert yourself into local politics, specifically to be open on Sundays and other things that they didn't have the regulation to recognize a brewery, just a bar or restaurant, which you're maybe one, maybe it's not that. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Kentucky laws and Winchester, Kentucky city laws have been kind of at the heart of what we've battled since opening in 2019. Even when we were working on our first building renovation in 2018, we were trying to hustle to get open as soon as possible because you make money once you open. We wanted to do this for our city as fast as possible. The Guild, luckily being close to us and understanding, breweries and planning and things like that, suggested hold off, just give yourself a break for a minute. There's going to be a chance that you may not have to sign with a distributor out of the gate, which was a game changer. It's hard to explain how that was a game changer, but for a long time, the distributors were very much inside the breweries at all times, analyzing taxes and things like that. We've never had to deal with that because that law was lifted before we opened. That was the first step. Coming into after we opened, we still didn't have self-distribution rights. Of course, we could have our tap room and sell in our tap room. We didn't have to work with a distributor anyways, which was nice. But we didn't have Sunday sales laws in Winchester. Winchester is not one of those cities that would identify as moist. It was a fully wet city, but it still would not allow for sales on Sunday. And we fought that. We got lucky with a winery in town that had already opened was able to open on Sundays in the county. They worked with us and helped us get to a point that we could approach our city commission. The crazy things that go on in those city commission conversations, just the people that'll come to you and fight you over the littlest thing, like trying to serve a pint on Sunday, which we know does really good things for our community. It helps with beer tourism in Winchester. We know that it helps with bringing a new, vibrant culture to Winchester. And that's something that we were always behind. It wasn't just about, the sales on Sunday. It's changing a full culture of our small town. From there, we just in the last week had package sales on Sunday actually opened up. So now we can sell cans to go on Sunday and crowlers to go on Sunday. I mean, we really didn't have anything to do with that, but because, we put really good people into our city commission that we had to fight for. And we advocated for those people. But the problem is once you're so tired, when they reached out to us and they're like, hey, we want to do package sales. And it's like, we want to do package sales too, but we don't want to be told we're going to hell again. We've been told, we've had preachers yell at us. We don't want to be yelled at again. And, for a staff, that's hard. So to try and protect your staff, your small staff, young staff that doesn't need to go to these meetings and have people scream at them and tell them bad things and things. It's just not fair. We weren't really excited to go and talk about that. But luckily, we went on the second reading and everything passed fine. So now Winchester kind of operates in, what I would consider normal city laws. So we can do some cool stuff. We're all very proud of it. So you can come to Winchester, stay at the Airbnb, get your beers on Sunday, and come see us and get beers on Sunday too. So it's fun.
So trip to Winchester on Sunday.
Yes.
Heard.
Next Sunday, I think.
Yes. I know for one, when he was telling me this, I was confused that it might be why you would have to convince somebody about beer culture, since it is so communal and we all get it because we're all in it and we believe in it and we drink beer. So it was definitely baffling to me to hear that people wouldn't want you guys to sell beer on Sunday.
I mean, I remember growing up in Kentucky when you couldn't buy beer on Sunday.
Yeah.
I remember moving to Indiana when you couldn't buy beer on Sunday, but Kentucky that year changed it, and we would still have to send people all the way down. If somebody was coming back from, say they went to, I went to the University of Kentucky, sorry, but you send somebody down to go to a UK game and they're coming back up to Indiana. It's like, hey, we're doing a Sunday fun day. We need you to grab like a couple cases of beer because we can't do anything. And that was strange. I remember those, but to move from a city as vibrant and, crazy wonderful as Louisville to back home to Winchester, when it's like, you can't do this, you can't do that. It's like, I know that this is better for that city. Why isn't it good for our city? Mm-hmm. And to convince people that it's not the devil, it's okay. It's just, the things that are always have been said are terrifying, but they don't have any really basis on reality, I don't think, but.
Definitely. I'm actually going to jump out of line and we're going to pivot to John on the end here. So as we've heard from Tyler a little bit, that there's a lot of red tape to kind of cut through if you're going to open a brewery. But then throw a global pandemic in the middle of it. In the words of John, it's an absolute nightmare. So John, can you kind of share the trials and tribulations you faced opening Noble Funk, in the kind of beginning stages of COVID, and then how that changed after, right? Because everything was very different.
Hello. Okay. First of all, I'm really, really happy to be here. I think COVID took a lot out of everybody. Everybody's a little broken. They lost people. It's changed our world drastically. And just something as simple as gathering together with a beer or cider in your hand, eating some pizza, and hearing us crazy people talk. There's something magical about that. So thank you for being here. I've been trying to open a brewery since 2012. My cousin, a friend of his, and myself, back then were looking at small spaces, small systems. Back then Belgian beer was hot, so we were going to do Belgian beer. We didn't know what we were doing. It was absolutely insane. And luckily it didn't quite work out that way. It's really nice to learn on somebody else's dime. Not everybody gets that chance. But I lived, as she said before, I lived in Chicago for a while. My wife and I moved to Florida for a while, so that I could pursue this passion. And about 2018, we figured, hey, it's good to start a family. Let's come back home. Luckily, my parents and my in-laws live here. And that's when our lives completely changed. I thought, I've been here for a while. I've professionally brewed for 8+ years. I know what I'm looking at, and I was wrong. I did save myself a lot of money, but COVID flipped the whole script. It changed everything. 2x4s went from $2 to $9. Sheets of plywood went from $20 to $100. Labor, as everybody knows, everybody here works one job or another, and labor's through the roof. Labor costs 2-3 times as much. It's harder and harder to get people into a space to work on something. In here, every single thing you see, we had a problem with. From the lights, from the draft tower, from the TVs, from the greenery, et cetera, et cetera. And, we thought we were in good shape. We thought, hey, this is an old Kroger building. The walls are good. The plumbing's good. The floor is good. And it is a Herculean effort to try and open a brewery, especially of this magnitude. I've talked to probably hundreds of home brewers at this point, and all of them are constantly looking at getting a big system, doing the full thing. They want this big, grand brewery. And, I try to talk them out of it, as a lot of brewers tried to talk me out of it. I'm very proud that Kentucky beer culture has moved as fast and as hard as it has in the last 10 years. Growing up here, my parents took me to Silo Brewing when I was like 5 years old. And we would go to BBC, and we would go to, New Albanian, and there just wasn't a lot here. A lot of the same old. And then you've got, Leah, who opened Apocalypse, and you've got ATG that opened, and they started bringing real beer to Louisville. They started saying, hey, you don't have to have the same old. Let's try something fun. Let's try something different. And they've stepped up in the guild in a way that a lot of us young brewers take for granted. There's a new young generation of brewers, of beer folk, that, we take for granted that we have tap rooms. We take for granted that we have self-distribution. We take for granted that we don't have to sign for a distributor to open our doors. Having worked in bigger production facilities, when you sign your life away to a distributor, if they choose to blackball you, you're shot. You're dead in the water. And for the work that they've done pre-COVID and even through COVID to keep us going, to support us, to help build all these new guys, the number of small breweries that have popped up on 1-barrel systems, 2-barrel systems, et cetera, is huge. COVID has flipped the script. Big distribution is dead. The big guys, Sierra Nevada, all the breweries that AB owns, all that stuff, they're fighting for massive market share. They're fighting for pennies on the dollar going into Walmart and Meijer and Kroger and Target and whatnot. We are lucky because beer is going, while, this week's theme is beer going global, it is also going local at the same time. We are, neighborhood breweries are huge. And we are so lucky to have regulars from the neighborhood come in and enjoy our product. And so, the coolest thing, the thing that I'm most happy about is championing all these small breweries that are opening up, pushing what we're trying to do and kind of helping us build a new culture out of COVID.
Definitely. And you said something earlier about small, and by no means is Noble Funk small. We're all sitting in here right now, but you shared that it was originally supposed to be small. In fact, so small that it was like across the street on 3rd Street, but it was sinking into the ground.
So we were originally supposed to be in an old auto glass shop about 200 yards that way. And I've got an engineering degree, but I try to take things at face value half the time and not overthink stuff. And I look at the building one day and I'm like, this doesn't quite seem right. There's a giant crack in this wall and it's about 1.5 feet lower than it should be. And I'm like, what do you guys think? And our architects are like, oh yeah, we can just prop that up. It'll be fine. And then I'm like, no, let's just take a core sample. And it turns out that straight 20 feet down was sand all the way. And they're like, oh, well, we'll send this to the engineers. We'll see what happens. And I'm like, I know exactly what this means. And they came back and they said, it's going to cost $1.5 million to dig underneath and put some concrete. And I said, well, it's a pandemic. We don't have $1.5 million to do that. I mean, I can buy, 4 buildings for $1.5 million. So we're not going to do that. So we got lucky. This is kind of a fringe neighborhood. It's called Sobro. Nobody ever really.
Sobro.
South of Broadway. Ooh. Old Louisville doesn't want us. Downtown doesn't want us, but we want us. So that's cool. A lot of breweries are building in fringe neighborhoods, where land is a little cheaper. We can strike out, and we can build a community. This area is a food desert. We got Ollie's Trolley, which, is open during the day. And we got Dizzy Whiz, which, you're going to get held up for a grilled cheese. Sometimes I have been held up for grilled cheese there before, but it was a good grilled cheese. But, we're trying to build spaces in less traveled areas, places where, square footage doesn't cost $25 a foot. He talked about, being a block and a half off Main Street and feeling like you're not in the town of Winchester. However, I guarantee that block and a half is a lot cheaper than being right in the center. And so we've got Kyle here who's with Trellis, and he's in another, fringe neighborhood trying to build a new brewery in a new space. And we're super excited for him to join the ranks of the overstressed, overworked brewers.
Shout out Trellis.
City. Yeah.
Welcome.
But you never really know how the journey is going to take you. And COVID, while it did put a wrench in everything, really, I think, is bringing us together and making community and supporting each other and beer more of a focus. So.
And I agree. I think that's so lovely. Every time you talk, you're always talking about other breweries too and how much they help the community. And you mentioned something to me like one day you hope that people can hop, that everyone is close enough and you can brewery hop and have a beer one place, walk to another. And I think that's so great because breweries opening more neighborhoods just means more community. I think most of us could agree with that. Thank you, John.
Cheers.
And thanks for hosting us. So something Leah said to me when I was talking to Leah, she said, change takes time. And Leah has been in beer for 30 plus years, from being a home brewer to then opening Apocalypse. We talked about her street cred earlier. But Leah, I was hoping you could kind of talk about what changes you've seen in the industry over the years, since I think, and I hope I can say this freely, that a lot of people recognize you as being one of the first women in not only beer, but Kentucky beer as well. I think you're the first one brewer and owner of a brewery in Kentucky as well.
Yes. I have to give. I always want to give props to Eileen Martin, who is my mentor in the Loggers Club. When I joined the Loggers Club, I went to my first homebrew meeting, and Eileen and Dienes, two women in the club, and Eileen was a brewer, and all these people were drinking beer, and they were handing out pickles and cigars, and I'm like, what am I doing here? I want to learn to be a better home brewer, and they're doing pickles and cigars, but I also met some really kind and talented folks that got me started on my journey. And I tasted their beers and they were good. They tasted my beers and told me I should work on it a little more. But that's where I kind of got started with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we kind of talked too. You told me a story about when you were in the Homebrewers Club that you were typically the only woman, and sometimes you'd enter competitions and you kind of felt popular because everyone would know your name, but it's because they knew you were the only woman that entered the competition. And you used this word kind of over when we were talking, kind of over and over again, that you felt maybe that you had to overachieve a little bit. And then we kind of talked how maybe that's changed, right? In like today's maybe beer industry. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like what it was like to maybe feel like you have to overachieve, and do you still feel that way today?
Yeah, absolutely. nothing like going to a beer event and, when you're in your own brewery, you're the one going to the event and you're the one pouring. And they'd look at me and they'd go, oh, so what do you do at the brewery? And I'm like, well, I brew all the beer. And they're like, oh my God, really? Really? I'm like, yeah, because guess what? I can make beer. And her story, my old story when I was a home brewer, and it was the largest homebrew competition by volume in Cincinnati. And I show up with my couple of kegs of beer and they're like, oh, you must be Leah. And I'm like, well, how do you know my name? I'm like, oh, you're the only woman that entered. And these are people from like Ohio and Indiana and Kentucky entering this competition. And then I would typically, luckily, I would win. But as I would go up there year after year, and then we opened up Apocalypse, but I would go up there and judge. And I had so many, there's still only a handful of women that were brewing and entering, but they would come to me and they said, you are a mentor to me. You are an inspiration because you always showed up to this competition and you would win. And we didn't even know that women were really brewing. And I'm like, well, I do it because it's fun. I mean, I didn't do it because I was trying to prove anything. I enjoy the hobby and the fact that people in my homebrew club, I mean, even in the early brewing community, you would show up and it was sort of like a boys club or the new brewers would get together and then, I'd been brewing and winning all these competitions for years and years and then opened up, and worked in a professional situation and, but, they'd been homebrewing or they just opened their brewery and they wouldn't talk to me because, I didn't have the beard and the flannel shirt and
John, we're looking at you.
I could lend her a flannel shirt.
Yeah, but it's gotten better. It has gotten better. I mean, even when I go and judge out at like World Beer Cup or Great American Beer Fest, it used to be only 25% of the judges were women, and women have better palates, but they always would pick from the brewing industry. But now when I go to events, it's gone up to about 30%. Not a lot, but it's progress. There's more and more women, and it's not just in the front of the house. It's not just women just doing marketing. It's women working in the back of the house. It's women that are working in the cellar department. It's women, lifting up those 55-pound bags and getting on the brew deck and making it happen.
Yeah, and I think we can all, yes, I love all the clapping. I think it's so great, the story you share with me about people coming up to you and mentioning that they think of you as a role model, because I know I certainly have as a woman in beer as well, or just feeling that way. I've always respected what you've done, and we've had long conversations over a few beers about your taste, being a master taster and doing that stuff. I think it's so cool. And I know that you sometimes are humbled, say this humbly, that you never set out to change anything, but I think that you did open a lot of doors for a lot of people in the industry, and that's nothing to kind of knock. Which is probably why you landed on the DEI committee for the Kentucky Guild of Brewers. I was hoping you could talk a little bit about your work on the committee and why you think it's important that the Guild has a DEI committee.
Right. I was like the only woman on our whole board. And I was grateful to be a woman and be on our board. I mean, our board has come a long way, has really changed. I was even more grateful when Jesse got on the board because I wasn't alone anymore. And we became a little bit more professional. It wasn't just like, we're a bunch of brewers and this is a club. And no, this is a group that is working with the legislature, working to try to protect what we have gained when we have gained a lot in Kentucky. It's an amazing, on the national scene, well, Jesse can talk more about it than I can, but they are amazed how far we have come in the short amount of time that we have had a guild, that we even have self-distribution in a state that bourbon is king. It is quite an accomplishment. And it's really helps out all our other small brewers. And as we've grown, we've also noticed that it's not just about, just be nice and everybody respect one another, and that's how the world is. Because if it was that easy, we wouldn't have DEI committees and we wouldn't have to have all these rules. But people break these rules and they're not nice to each other and they don't respect each other. And then we have to so we decided we needed a committee for our diversity and equity just to, move up into the 20th century and make sure that we were taking care of our people. I mean, we're a group of a lot of small brewers, but there are bigger breweries out there, and maybe they're not as nice as we are in Kentucky, but there are places that we needed to make sure we had those guidelines in place. We are not the police. We are not the DEI police whatsoever. But we think that some people, they just need guidance. And they may say hurtful things and don't understand that they have crossed a line, and it makes their employees feel uncomfortable. And it's maybe just the culture they grew up in. But education is a good thing. And so we are presenting, I have a small committee. Thank you.
Jerry Nagy.
Yes, Jerry and Katie and Jesse are all on that. I've got a few other people in town and out of town, and we opened it up to anybody in the guild, and anyone is welcome to join the committee. But we've got a small set of guidelines. We tried to make it open, not as simple as just be nice to each other and respect one another, but basically that's what it is. So I'm going to be presenting that to the guild this month, and then hopefully at our education conference we'll present it to everyone. And it's not like a 50-page document like the Brewers Association. That's not what we're about in Kentucky. We're going to give it the benefit of the doubt. We're going to make it just a skeleton of a document that says, be nice and respect one another. But if you do cross those lines, we're here to help. And we're here for the employees, and we're here for the owners, because it's got to be a two-way street. We want to make brewing in Kentucky open and accepting to everyone, because that's what we're about. Craft beer is about bringing people together, and we want to make sure that everyone feels welcome at the table and feels comfortable.
Thank you, Leah. And I believe you recruited someone for the committee that may or not be sitting on this panel right now. Sawyer?
Yeah, who knows social media? I don't.
Well, I thank you guys so much for sharing your stories with me, and I'm so glad you got to share a little bit with them. We could have probably gone so much deeper for so much longer, but against Michael and David's wishes, I am going to ask the group a question I will each answer individually, but it's fun. If you could sum up Kentucky beer culture in 3 words, what would they be? And you can just do it on your own pace, but kind of quickly, in the next 5 seconds. And John, you go.
Tasty. Tasty's a good one. Diverse is a good one, because we all come from different backgrounds. And most importantly, hopeful. Mm-hmm. We want to keep growing, and we are, just as a panel, we're grateful to see everybody here, because, sometimes we do these things and 3 people show up. But to be able to see this many people who want to connect with Kentucky and Louisville beer is huge. So,
who else can I put on the spot? Leah?
Creative. Yeah, creativity is key. Every brewer in the state brings something different to the table. That's only one word, but I'm going to just stick with it. Yeah.
It was more than, Tyler?
Tasty's a good word.
We can work together on the 3 words.
But creative is also a really good. Yeah.
We can say tasty again, yes.
I think first and foremost, community.
Mm-hmm.
Not just all of you all that have supported everything that all of us have done for, years on end, but it grows, which is the next one. There's so much growth within the brewing industry, within the Kentucky brewing industry, but just the consumers themselves, the people that love Kentucky beer is fantastic. And I think that's been a big change for all of it. Additionally, like I was telling you all, I lived here up until 2015. And when I left, I don't know what this was, but it was not Noble Funk. It was Kroger. So Molck wasn't even here. Apocalypse was here. Against the Grain was here. BBC was still here. So the growth of what Louisville beer has become is significant. And if you could see it through my eyes, it's really, really, really exciting. And I'm very proud to see this city go in that direction, because it could have gone in a million other directions. And you all went close, went community, and you grew really well and became creative and tasty.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Sawyer, what you got?
Passion. I have met people who come into this industry and they don't stay very long if they don't have passion for it. Shelter, I guess, is kind of just to go off of community. I think a lot of people who feel like they don't belong in certain places tend to come into craft beer. And not only is it a community, but then it becomes shelter because it's protective. It's safe. Yeah, we protect our own. Absolutely. There's some outliers, but we absolutely protect our own. We're very fierce about that. Oh, Jesus Christ. And love. Absolutely.
Oh my goodness.
There's love. There's love brewed into every drop that you drink. And if it's not, you can taste it. So it's those 3.
There are Kleenexes in the back if anyone needs them. Thank you guys so much. And I was going to ask a question that I felt once I got up here and after I talked to you all that now seemed kind of dumb, for lack of a better word, was like, I wanted to ask, what kept you going? Like when you're overcoming your challenges, but I don't think we have to ask that question because it's pretty obvious why. And I think you summed it up in all your words. There's passion. It's you guys care about it and you care about growing and growing the community. So I think that's really commendable. With that, I'd like to open the floor to any questions from the audience. Just raise your hand and I will point at you unaggressively, and then I'll repeat your question on the mic. David Satterley. I was asked to repeat the question on the mic. I believe he's saying, how do you guys deal with challenging customers? What's your company policy? And are you supported in how you respond to them? And anyone can answer.
You want to do it? You want this?
It can be more than one. You both can go.
We got this.
Right.
I still bartend. And it's bartending does help me a lot with my marketing and just being able to touch base with customers. I would say more often than not, especially in a more like technically post-COVID society, but as we all know, it's not post-COVID, like for real. People have a certain sense of entitlement from time to time. And it really is navigating the fact that you and your staff and your management, your ownership have tried to build a culture of you come in here, you try this product. We want you to find what you like. We want you to enjoy your time here. And trying to go up against somebody who maybe just seems like they don't want to enjoy their time at all. They are like gung-ho about not enjoying their time, the product, you, yourself. Going with as much kindness as you can up until you get to the point where like, and my management, my ownership would stand behind just being stern and just being like, if you're not happy, I'm really, really sorry. Like, hopefully you can come another time and try a different product or maybe work with a different bartender. But, for now, if this isn't what you want, like, I'm so sorry. And trying to find that middle point of really like, you never want to end up in a Facebook Live ever. But you also don't want to leave with that really yucky feeling of like, should have handled that better. I could have talked to them better. I could have talked to them better about the product or, there's only so much you can do as a bartender. There's only so much you can do as a staff member. And even sometimes you've watched your management or ownership try to talk to people and they have the same response that you would have. And you're like, okay, I know I handled that well. So trying to find like a middle point, but sometimes you just can't win. And that's okay. Like going home and going to sleep and being like, sorry, I didn't win that one.
And you didn't end up on the internet.
Exactly. As long as I did not end up in a Facebook Live compilation of Karens versus bartenders, I'm happy.
Or in a hospital for that matter. Some people are just. I think we all know the one term that we all love the most that comes from some customers from time to time. I know the owner. Yeah. We all deal with that. We've all known those people. We've all known those customers. The beauty of it, especially, I mean, I'm going to just assume, which you shouldn't do, but I'm going to assume with all of our companies that you all know your owners probably better than even the people that are saying this, which is what my bartenders always say to me is like, I just tell them, yeah, I do too. And
he signs my checks.
And they're like, well, I'll call him. And they're like, go for it. Just go for it. You know, I mean, it's so rare that weird stuff happens, but you own a bar. Hopefully we all make great enough beer that people enjoy it enough and your bartenders are taking care of people, but you're always going to hit that one point where somebody inadvertently makes a bad decision and then you have to deal with it. I think for at least myself, because we talk about this quite a bit, dealing with like just supporting your staff. I mean, your bar staff is your front line. If they don't feel empowered, they're not going to stay with you. And as we said in one of the best parts of Kentucky beer is growth. There's a lot of options out there. There's a lot of job opportunities out there. So you've got to really be a good owner. You've got to support your people. And I think that's in terms of dealing with bad customers, you've got to empower people to handle those the best way possible.
I love that.
I'd like to take it in a slightly different direction and say, being in a fringe neighborhood, yeah, we get the Karens and the difficult people, but we get a lot of homeless as well. And having worked in hospitality since I was young, everybody's first instinct is to throw somebody out. And we kind of go in the opposite direction. You know, we're lucky enough to have pizza and water and whatnot. And so we try to feed people. Sometimes just getting somebody to sit down, have a glass of water and a cheese bread, it, you know, lifts them up a little bit. It makes a possibly difficult situation a little safer for your bar staff and whatnot. And I think it's a little way for us to help support and build the community that's having a really hard time COVID forward. And so, yeah, you know, supporting your staff is extremely important, but also teaching your staff that compassion and humanity are extremely important is, you know, second to none as an owner.
Absolutely. Other questions? Yes, I like it. Clap. I love it. Any other question? Allie? I have to repeat all of that? Can I just hand her the mic to re-ask it? Different voice. So it sounds like, Allie, you're back in your hometown that doesn't want a craft brewery, and you're asking, aside from regulations, what else you can do to have them push it forward. Look at me.
That's a good question. That's
Kentucky Guild of Brewers.
Would help. You know, I learned early on that anytime you can share a portion of your journey, just go ahead and share it. As soon as we had a brand, we started sharing what was going on through just working through home brewing recipes, working through business plans, anything from doing small little merch pushes and things like that to try and create hype. By the time we opened, we had, I don't know, 2,000 to 4,000 followers and likes on Facebook and stuff like that, which was fine. But we had enough hype with that, and tried to build at least a community. One of the things I personally did, I'm not really a seasoned brewer by any means like Josh is. Like I taught myself, I'm self-taught, never worked in a brewery before, just had to kind of build all this stuff through home brewing. I planned on hiring a head brewer, and we just, on a barrel and a half system, it's hard to find somebody to come in and do that. So you just kind of figure it out. I think with that, I spent a lot of time working on recipe development on my own and just, I don't know, problem solving and sharing those problems. And, I had a kegerator in my house, and I would throw these small parties. I'd like to say they're small. We'd pack my house and just have a ton of people in there and be like, here's the thing. All the beer is free that's sitting in my kegerator, as long as you can be honest about it. The moment I can tell you're lying, you're no longer drinking my beer. And so we got a lot of feedback. It changed a lot of our recipes and things like that, really helped us along the way. And by the time we opened, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to even say how blessed Abettor's been. It was weird. We didn't, my family, my parents, and people that were around me were like, yeah, it'll be a really fun opening. It's a barrel and a half system. That's great. It's cute. And we ran out of beer within 15 minutes of being open. I mean, we had hundreds of people in this space that could only hold 48 people. I mean, the fire marshal couldn't even say anything. I mean, luckily, they don't work after 5 on Friday, so everything was great. But, in a small town, it's just, I immediately went to our mayors, our city leaders, our city manager, city commission, tourism, talked to them, tried to get them on board. Once they were on board, our mayor didn't want any more alcohol to be allowed in Winchester, did not want a brewery, did not want a distillery. Now we have 2 wineries, a distillery, and a brewery. So, we changed his way. We changed his mind, and, he comes to the brewery. He still doesn't drink, but he comes to the brewery. He'll hang out, comes to our events and stuff. So now we have a new mayor. She comes to the brewery. She also doesn't drink, but she comes and hangs out. So we've changed. It took a long, what feels, because of COVID, like what you talked about, this feels like 15 years. We'll be 5 in April. So it feels like a million years. Like I feel like I've owned a brewery my entire life, and I'm just, there's moments where you're kind of exhausted with dealing with the politics and stuff, but you've just got to, it's just part of the game, I think. At least I think it is. I don't know what everybody else is doing, but yeah, that's what we have to do. So hope that helps.
Yeah, so Allie, it sounds like just throw a huge party with free beer. Yes.
You're in.
And invite Tyler.
Kegerator.
Other questions? Sorry. Yes, right here. Okay. So he's asking, every team has a mascot. Who's the poster child for each of your breweries? Leah, kick us off.
Hero, our brewery cat.
I told you she works for a cat.
His name is Victor Sears. He's been with Blue Stallion for 10 years, as long as they have been open. If you ever look at our social media and you see a man who kind of looks like a disgruntled Santa, that's him. He is more than willing to be in any and all videos or posts that I make, and I thank God for his existence every single day.
Victor. You guys, Tyler, John?
We actually have a couple.
Is it the bunnies outside?
So the bunnies are the draw. They're chairs. Surprisingly, none of them have been stolen, even though I've been praying every night that one of them gets stolen. And then surprisingly, my 2 children. We get a lot of people who walk through here and they see a 3-year-old running behind the bar, grabbing stuff. And they freak out. They're like, why is there a child serving beer? And we say, oh, she owns the place. So, it's nice to grow a child in a brewery. She'll probably hate all of this in like 20 years, but we'll enjoy it while we got it.
We only hire Calvin Klein models. So, yeah. Now, our taproom manager, John Howard, looks like the lead singer of Fall Out Boy. So that works.
I'm glad I know this now.
There you go. We kind of use everyone. But our big focus is dogs. We're all dog owners. We love our dogs more than anything else. One of our flagship brands, Zero, is an Irish red ale named after my red lab that passed away a few years ago. And he was the mainstay brew dog. And we have a whole wall of brew dogs. We thought it was cliche because everybody has brew dogs, but I mean, our brew dogs we're full of dogs all the time. We answer more questions of how do you have dogs when dogs aren't allowed in restaurants in Winchester? Well, don't ask, don't tell. I mean, what are they going to say when they walk in and there's 10 dogs? You're going to shut us down?
You are on video right now.
I know. That's how little we fear about that. We would figure out a way.
All the cat people just left, by the way. There's like 2 of them that walked out.
Yeah, we have cats too, though. We can't win.
Still next to you. I don't know. Might have words later.
Well, we're down next to the tracks, so I mean, yeah, we have a lot of that as well. But they do the outside work.
Other questions? Michael?
Brewer Magazine.
I have to repeat the question first. Are there any industry podcasts, blogs that you would recommend? Instagrams, people that follow you in the beer industry? So like
Louisville Ale Trail.
Louisville Ale Trail. Oh, I didn't even catch on to that.
Kentucky Guild of Brewers.
Yep.
I believe it's Kentucky Common Hour. Yes.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good people. Good people.
Any other questions before we wrap up?
I'll do one.
All right, John.
So here in
So I'm going to repeat the question. So what do you guys think local or state can do to support sharing your story similar to how Greg Fisher coined bourbonism? Beerism sounds weird, so we can't take that.
I guess I'll start. It would be nice to have support from local government and the state and things like that. I think beer is a little more community driven. We get a lot of bourbon tourism in this city. I think building ourselves up, building up local organizations like Ale Trail. This is a plug. I want Ale Trail to get a little bus so they can drive people around and, continue to connect all of our great breweries together. Because we all have something to share. We all want to be together on this. And so I think government takes a long time to do a lot of things, and a lot of money. And post-COVID, I don't know about you guys, if you guys won the lottery recently, but I don't think we all have a lot of money. We do this for passion, for love, for the ability to create a product that people enjoy. I think I would like to see even more of a community push, more buy-in from our fans, our regulars, the people here, to just continue to kind of bring people along, jump from Noble Funk to Apocalypse, to schedule tours, to drive a bus down to Abettor, or to, go to Blue Stallion in Lexington and hop around all the breweries there. I think we can do a lot more than we're doing. I know it's hard, but I don't really need to see the government do stuff. I think we can do it ourselves.
Yeah. Ooh, resounding yeah, I like that.
I think it's kind of wild. There's a lot of push for buy local in a lot of states. And I'm not saying that Kentucky doesn't support buying locally, but this might be kind of all over the place. Your question earlier about your hometown not wanting to have a brewery, it reminded me of the fact that Sawstone out in Moorhead, this was a couple Christmases ago. My wife and I went out to go see her mom for Christmas, and she lives in Frenchburg. And we had seen that Sawstone had posted on their story that they were going to be open on Christmas Day. And it wasn't because there was some evil owner being like, you have to come work on Christmas Day, but it was genuinely because the bar staff knew that there are people who are lonely on Christmas. They don't have a place to go. They don't have family, like whatever the situation is, the fact that they were open just as a space, not as a brewery, not as a come buy a beer and come, get tanked on Christmas, but like come because you need somewhere to be. So I think that like the push for breweries, not just as places to drink and places to buy, but places to spend time, places to host events, because we are so community driven, is so important. And I don't know, what we can do government wise, but it's like John said, where it's like, this is about community and just making sure that our people are out there putting out the good word for us, and that we ourselves are doing the hard work of making sure that we are just a space sometimes. Whether or not you get something from our taps, we are a space, and that you're always welcome is the number one thing that's going to get the attention of the average Joe who knows an average Joe who knows Bashir or knows a, committee member of a committee member. Like it's just that small and that simple to start with.
Well said.
I can continue with your Sawstone. The person that does our trivia on Thursday also does the trivia for Sawstone. We're right next to a beautiful brick road. They're also next to a beautiful brick road that leads right up to the University of Moorhead. If you haven't gone and done trivia there on Wednesday, it's worth the trip. Especially when it's nice and warm outside. Their city is doubled down on Sawstone so much that they block off this city street for trivia every Thursday. They bring in food trucks. They've built up this like little section of downtown, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little jealous. It's just wonderful what they've done. And they pack this thing with professors, students. When we were in college, we weren't drinking, $5-6 pints, but these guys are going down there and supporting their brewery. And it's really cool. We've gotten to see a lot of cool stuff. And I think that community, the local community could do a lot more for its individual breweries and the breweries that are inside its counties than what we would see on a statewide level. Honestly, at a statewide level, I'd rather have less government in our business.
And yes. Are there any other questions? Or is this a good, oh yes, Allie, shoot. Chug a beer? Say more.
Yes.
Well, that was my good friend Elena, who did that with a former coworker. And that was actually one of the first posts I ever saw from Blue Stallion when I moved here, and I was looking for a brewery to make my home. And I remember being like, oh my God, not to judge a book by its cover, but I was like, oh my God, a lesbian that works at a local brewery? I have to go work there because I'm also a lesbian. So I'm not nearly as good as she is, but I'm up for a challenge.
So is that a yes?
It might be a yes.
We'll convene at the bar after, which is soon. So speaking of your last question, I'm going to roll off this a little bit. What can state and local do to support breweries? But I can tell you how you can support your local breweries right now. On your tables, there's a QR code where you can directly donate to the Kentucky Guild of Brewers, which is where I work, where Jesse works. That all we do is advocate for these guys up here and the good work that they do. That's my plug for the evening. And I want to say thank you to all of you for being here and sharing your stories. And thank you guys for coming. And thank you, Louisville Ale Trail, for having us. And I believe, when is Louisville Beer Week over? This Sunday? My Morning Beer Fest, Saturday at Gallant Fox. I'm wrong about all the details. Cut that from the podcast. Cool. Thank you, guys. And give these guys a round of applause, please. And 78 Social sponsored this whole thing. Thank you.